Who are you? And why does it hurt when I look at you? The words fall from Jungkook's lips like shattered glass, trembling in the sterile white silence of the hospital room. The steady beep of the heart monitor fills the space between them, each pulse echoing louder than the last. Rain lashes against the window, streaking the glass like tears that refuse to stop. Across from him stands Park Jimin, frozen, breath caught somewhere between hope and devastation. For a moment, Jimin says nothing. His fingers tighten around the edge of the hospital bed, knuckles paling, as if the only thing keeping him upright is the fragile thread of control he's desperately trying not to lose. Jungkook's eyes, those same deep, endless eyes that once held galaxies of laughter and warmth, now look at him like a stranger searching for meaning in an unfamiliar dream. But there's something else there too, something that doesn't belong to forgetting. A flicker, a pull, a pain. Jimin finally breathes, his voice barely more than a whisper. I'm someone you used to know. The lie tastes bitter, because how do you explain a love that has lived in every quiet glance, every stolen touch, every unspoken promise, to someone who no longer remembers any of it, watches him carefully, brows knitting together? There's confusion, yes, but beneath it something deeper stirs, like a melody he almost remembers but can't quite hum. Then why, Jungkook murmurs, pressing a hand to his chest, does it feel like I'm losing something just by not knowing you? Jimin's composure shatters. He turns away abruptly, swallowing hard as the weight of those words crashes into him. Because even without memories, Jungkook still feels it. The connection. The gravity that always pulled them toward each other, no matter how hard they tried to resist. And that's what terrifies Jimin the most. Because if feelings remain, then so does the pain. Before the accident, Jungkook had been fearless. Not in the reckless way people admired from afar, but in the quiet, stubborn way he loved. Once he gave his heart, he didn't take it back. Not even when things got complicated. Not even when Jimin tried to push him away, especially not then. Jimin remembers it all too clearly. The late nights in the studio, when the world outside faded into nothing but music and the soft rhythm of their breathing. Jungkook would hum absent-mindedly, tapping his fingers against the table, always creating, always chasing something just out of reach. And Jimin would watch him, always watching, as if memorizing every small detail could somehow protect it from disappearing. But memories, as it turns out, are fragile things. One moment, one accident, one cruel twist of fate. And everything changes. It had been raining that night too. Jungkook insisted on driving, despite Jimin's quiet protests. Fine, he'd said, flashing that familiar smile that made it impossible to argue. Trust me. Always did. That was his first mistake. The roads were slick, the streetlights blurring into streaks of gold and white. Music played softly in the background, one of those unfinished tracks Jungkook kept replaying, adjusting, perfecting. You overthink too much, Jungkook teased, glancing at him briefly. Just feel it, Jimin huffed, crossing his arms. Someone has to think since you clearly don't. Jungkook laughed. And for a moment everything felt normal until it didn't. The headlights came out of nowhere, too bright, too fast, a screech of tires. The violent jolt of impact, glass shattering like 1,000 broken stars. And then darkness. Jimin wakes up first, disoriented, dazed, alive. His first thought isn't about himself, it's Jungkook, always Jungkook. He stumbles out of the wreckage, heart pounding, panic clawing its way up his throat as he searches through the chaos. Jungkook, he shouts, voice cracking. No response. Just the distant sound of rain. And then he sees him still, too still, blood tracing a thin line along his temple. Jimin's world stops now, standing in this hospital room days later. Jimin wishes, selfishly, desperately, that Jungkook had woken up angry instead. Angry would mean he remembered. Angry would mean they still had something to hold on to. But this quiet emptiness in Jungkook's gaze feels worse than any anger ever could. Do you have anyone I should call? Jungkook asks suddenly, breaking the silence. Jimin hesitates. There are so many answers he could give, so many truths, but only one that feels safe. You have people who care about you, Jimin says carefully. They'll be here soon. Not a lie, just not the whole truth. Jungkook nods slowly, though uncertainty still lingers in his expression. His fingers fidget with the hospital blanket, a habit Jimin recognizes instantly. Some things, it seems, don't need memory to exist. They're just part of who you are. And maybe, just maybe, love is one of those things. 2 days pass. Jungkook learns pieces of his life like fragments of a puzzle that refuses to fully come together. Names, faces, facts, all of it feels distant, like reading about someone else's story instead of his own. But Jimin doesn't feel distant, he feels close, too close. It doesn't make sense, and yet it's the only thing that does. Why are you always here? Jungkook asks one evening, watching Jimin as he absent-mindedly adjusts the flowers by the window. Jimin pauses. Because how do you explain that leaving was never an option? Jimin starts, then falters. I want to make sure you're okay. Jungkook studies him, gaze searching. You look at me like you're afraid I'll disappear, he says quietly. Jimin's breath catches, because he already did. There's a moment, a small, fragile moment when Jungkook reaches out. His fingers brush against Jimin's wrist. It's nothing. Barely a touch, but it feels like everything. A spark ignites, unfamiliar yet deeply known. Jungkook frowns slightly, as if trying to understand the sudden rush of emotion flooding his chest. Why does this feel, he whispers, important? Jimin doesn't answer. He can't. Because if he does, everything will unravel. And maybe Jungkook deserves a chance to live without the weight of a love he can't remember. Maybe letting go is the kindest thing he can do. Even if it breaks him weeks later, Jungkook stands outside the hospital for the first time since the accident. The world feels different, sharper, louder, real, but also incomplete. Beside him, Jimin watches quietly, hands tucked into his pockets. You don't have to stay, Jungkook says suddenly. Jimin looks at him, surprised. I mean it, Jungkook continues. You've done enough. Enough, the word echoes painfully, as if everything they had could ever be reduced to something so small. Jimin forces a smile. Take care of yourself, Jungkook. Just like that, he turns away. That night, Jungkook can't sleep. There's a restlessness inside him, something tugging at his thoughts, refusing to let him settle. He closes his eyes, and for a split second he sees it, a memory blurry. Fleeting, Jimin's laughter, warm, bright, real. Jungkook sits up abruptly, heart racing. His chest tightens, an ache spreading through him that he doesn't understand but can't ignore. Jimin, he whispers, the name coming naturally, instinctively, like it belongs to him, like it always has. And in that moment, Jungkook realizes something that no lost memory can erase. Even if his mind forgets, his heart never did. Love, after all, isn't just something you remember, it's something you carry, through silence, through distance, through loss, and even in a world where everything else fades, it remains. Morning arrives quietly, slipping through the curtains in pale gold streaks that settle across the unfamiliar room. Jungkook wakes with a sharp breath, his chest still tight from the echo of that dream. No, not a dream. It felt too real, too precise. The sound of Jimin's laughter still lingers somewhere deep inside him, like a song stuck between memory and instinct. He presses his hand against his chest again. That feeling. It's still there, stronger now, not fading like the doctors said it would. Growing, the city outside hums with life, indifferent to the storm unraveling inside him. Cars pass, people laugh, the world moves forward. But Jungkook feels suspended, caught between something he's supposed to remember and something he's afraid to lose again. He finds himself walking without thinking, step after step, as if his body knows where to go, even when his mind doesn't. And somehow, he ends up there. The studio, the door creaks softly as he pushes it open. Dust dances in the sunlight filtering through the high windows, and the faint scent of wood, coffee, and something distinctly familiar wraps around him like a ghost of the past. Jungkook steps inside slowly. His fingers trail along the edge of the table, the couch, the scattered sheets of music. Something stirs, a flicker. He closes his eyes, and suddenly, again, a voice says, soft but firm. Jungkook's eyes snap open. The room is empty, but the voice. It felt close, too close. He turns sharply, and there near the window, Jimin. For a moment, neither of them speaks. Jimin looks like he wasn't expecting this. His eyes widen slightly, then soften, something unreadable passing through them before he quickly looks away. You shouldn't be here alone, Jimin says quietly, breaking the silence. You're still recovering. Jungkook takes a step closer. I remembered something. Jimin freezes just for a second, but Jungkook sees it, that reaction, that fear. What did you remember? Jimin asks, his voice carefully controlled. Jungkook hesitates, because how do you explain something that isn't whole? I heard you, he says finally. Your voice, you told me to try again. Exhales slowly, almost like he'd been holding his breath this entire time. That doesn't mean anything, he replies too quickly. Jungkook frowns. It means something to me. The tension between them shifts, not explosive, not obvious, but undeniable. Jungkook steps closer again, this time more certain. Why are you avoiding me? The question lands heavier than expected. Jimin lets out a quiet, humorless laugh, running a hand through his hair, a habit Jungkook doesn't remember but somehow recognizes. I'm not avoiding you. You left. Looks up at that. And for the first time since Jungkook woke up, there's anger in his eyes. I stayed longer than I should have. The words cut, sharper than anything Jungkook was prepared for. He asks almost instinctively. Jimin doesn't answer right away because the truth is dangerous, the truth is everything. You wouldn't understand, Jimin says eventually, his voice quieter now. Then make me understand. There's something desperate in Jungkook's tone now, something raw, and it shakes Jimin more than he wants to admit. You think this is simple? Jimin snaps suddenly, the frustration breaking through. You think you can just walk back into places, say you remember a few things, and everything will fall into place? Jungkook flinches slightly, but he doesn't back away. He says, but I know I'm missing something important. Jimin's jaw tightens. You're missing everything. Silence crashes between them again, heavy, unforgiving. Jungkook swallows hard. Then why does it feel like you're the only thing I still have? The question isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It hits exactly where it hurts. Jimin looks at him, really looks this time, and whatever walls he's built start to crack. Because that's the problem, that's always been the problem. No matter how much Jungkook forgets, he still finds his way back. You don't have me, Jimin says finally, his voice breaking just slightly. Jungkook shakes his head immediately. That's not true. You don't remember me. I don't need to. Jimin blinks, caught off guard. Jungkook steps closer, close enough now that the distance between them feels meaningless. Whatever this is, Jungkook continues, his voice softer now, it didn't disappear. Jimin's breath falters. Feelings don't just vanish because memories do. That's the moment everything shifts. Jimin laughs again, but this time it's different, shakier, more fragile. You really don't get it, he says, then tell me. Looks away, because if he says it out loud, it becomes real again, and he's not sure he can survive that. You loved me, Jimin says finally, the words barely above a whisper. Jungkook's heart stutters. And you still do, Jimin adds before Jungkook can respond. You just don't remember why. The room feels smaller, colder, heavier. Jungkook's mind races, trying to piece together anything that makes sense of the storm inside him. Loved, still do, the words echo. But instead of confusion, there's recognition. Then why are you trying to leave? Jungkook asks. Jimin closes his eyes briefly. Because this is the part that hurts the most. Because you deserve a clean start, he says. Without complications. Is that what I was? The question is quiet, but it carries weight. Jimin opens his eyes, and for a second he almost says no, almost, but the past is complicated, messy, full of things that don't fit into simple answers. Yes, he says instead. Jungkook nods slowly, as if accepting it, but something in his expression changes, not pain, not anger, something else, something stronger. Then I'll decide that for myself. Jimin's breath catches. What? You don't get to choose what I feel, Jungkook says, his voice steady now. Even if I forgot everything, this is still mine. He steps even closer, close enough that Jimin can feel the warmth of his presence, the steady rhythm of his breathing, close enough that it feels dangerous. Stay, Jungkook says, one word, simple, but it carries everything. Jimin looks at him, searching for doubt, for hesitation, for anything that would make this easier, but there's none, only certainty, and that terrifies him. Because if he stays, he might fall again. And this time, there's no guarantee Jungkook will catch him, but as Jungkook reaches out, his fingers brushing lightly against Jimin's hand, that same spark ignites again, stronger, brighter, unavoidable. Jimin's resolve crumbles, just a lut. You're going to regret this, Jimin whispers. Jungkook shakes his head. He says softly, I think this is the only thing I won't regret. And for the first time since everything fell apart, Jimin doesn't pull away, not completely, because maybe, just maybe, some things are meant to be remembered, even if it's not with the mind, but with the heart.
Jimin doesn't pull his hand away. For a moment that feels suspended outside of time, their fingers remain lightly intertwined, uncertain, fragile, but undeniably real. Jungkook watches him carefully, as if memorizing the way Jimin breathes, the way his eyes flicker with hesitation, the way his guard slowly begins to fall apart. The silence between them isn't empty. It's full. Full of things unsaid, things remembered without memory, things that refuse to disappear. I don't know what I'm doing, Jimin admits quietly. His voice is softer now, stripped of the defenses he's been clinging to. There's no anger left, no sharp edges, just something vulnerable and raw. Jungkook tilts his head slightly, studying him. Then don't think about it, he says. Just stay. Lets out a breath that almost sounds like a laugh, but there's no humor in it. You make it sound easy. It feels easy, Jungkook replies. And that's exactly the problem, because nothing about this was ever easy. Not the way they met, not the way they fell, not the way they broke. And definitely not this, standing here in the same place where everything once began, pretending that feelings alone can rebuild what memory erased. Jimin gently pulls his hand back this time, but not abruptly. Not like before. His fingers linger for a second longer than necessary, as if reluctant to let go completely. You should sit, he says, gesturing toward the couch. You're still healing. Jungkook doesn't argue, he sits, but his eyes never leave Jimin, watching, waiting, as if afraid that if he looks away, Jimin might disappear again. The studio feels smaller now, filled with the quiet tension of everything they're not saying. Jimin moves around the space with familiarity, adjusting things, picking up stray papers, anything to avoid standing still under Jungkook's gaze. But Jungkook notices everything. The way Jimin taps his fingers against surfaces when he's nervous, the way he avoids eye contact when something matters too much, the way he exhales slowly like he's trying to calm a storm inside himself. I used to come here a lot, did I? Jungkook asks. Jimin pauses, then nods. Yeah. Did I do? Jimin hesitates. You worked, he says. You stayed up too late. You forgot to eat unless someone reminded you. Jungkook raises an eyebrow slightly. Someone. Jimin doesn't answer right away. But the silence says enough. You, Jungkook says softly. It's not a question. Jimin looks at him, surprised. I don't remember, Jungkook continues, but it feels like it was you. Jimin's chest tightens because he's right, of course he is. You took care of me, Jungkook adds, his voice quieter now. Jimin shakes his head lightly, trying to brush it off. It wasn't a big deal. It was, Jungkook insists. There's a firmness in his tone now, something steady, something certain. And I think. He pauses, searching for the right words. I think I did the same for you. Jimin's expression shifts, just slightly, but enough. You don't remember enough to say that, Jimin says. Then why does it feel true? Jimin looks away again, because feelings have always been their weakness, their strength, their undoing. You didn't just take care of me, Jungkook continues, leaning forward slightly. You stayed. The word lingers, heavy, meaningful. Jimin swallows. That's what people do, he replies. Jungkook says. It's what someone does when it matters. The air changes again, subtle, but undeniable. Jimin exhales slowly, running a hand through his hair before finally sitting down across from Jungkook. Not too close, not too far, a safe distance, or at least he tries to convince himself it is. You're different, Jungkook says after a moment. Jimin frowns slightly. What do you mean? I don't remember you, Jungkook admits, but I feel like you used to smile more. The observation lands softly, but it hits deep. Jimin looks down at his hands. I did. Why did you stop? The question is simple, the answer isn't. Because things change, Jimin says. Jungkook watches him carefully. Or because something happened. Jimin lets out a quiet breath. You really don't give up, do you? Jungkook shakes his head. I don't think I ever did. Another flicker, another piece, not a memory, but something close. Jimin leans back slightly, eyes drifting toward the window where the light has shifted, casting long shadows across the room. You were stubborn, he says. Jungkook smiles faintly. Was, Jimin almost smiles back, almost. You chased things you wanted, Jimin continues. Even when you shouldn't have, Jungkook tilts his head. And what did I want? Jimin's breath catches, the answer sits right there, dangerous, fragile, impossible to take back once spoken, but before he can decide whether to say it, Jungkook stands. The sudden movement catches Jimin off guard. What are you? Jungkook steps closer, not rushed, not impulsive, deliberate. Like he's following something he can't see, but trusts anyway. I think I know, Jungkook says quietly. Jimin's heart starts to race, because there's something in Jungkook's eyes now, something familiar, too familiar. You, Jungkook says, one word, soft, certain. Jimin's breath falters. Jungkook, but Jungkook doesn't stop. He closes the distance between them completely now, standing so close that the world outside this moment seems to disappear. I don't remember falling for you, Jungkook admits. Jimin's chest tightens painfully. I think, Jungkook continues, his voice barely above a whisper, I never stopped. Silence, but not empty, not this, searches his face, looking for doubt, for confusion, for anything that would make this easier to resist. But there's none, only truth, unfiltered, unprotected. You don't know what you're saying, Jimin whispers. Jungkook shakes his head slowly. He says, but I know what I feel. That's what breaks Jimin, because this isn't the Jungkook he lost, and yet it is. In every way that matters. You're supposed to forget, Jimin says, his voice cracking now. You're supposed to move on. It hurt you. The words come out sharper than intended. Jungkook stills. What did? Jimin looks at him, really looks at him, and for a second everything comes rushing back. The arguments, the distance, the fear, the love that was too much and not enough all at once. Me, Jimin says finally. The word hangs between them, heavy, unavoidable. Jungkook doesn't step back, doesn't hesitate. Doesn't break. Then I'll take that risk, he says. Jimin's eyes widen slightly. You do understand. I don't need to understand everything, Jungkook interrupts gently. I just need to understand this. He places a hand over his chest again, right where it hurts, right where it pulls, right where everything leads back to one person. You're here, Jungkook says, and it matters. Jimin's defenses crumble completely this time, not all at once, but enough to take a step closer. Enough to let his hand lift, just slightly, before stopping himself. Because if he touches Jungkook again, there might be no going back, but Jungkook notices. Of course he does. And this time, he's the one who closes the distance. Their hands meet again, warmer, stronger, less uncertain, and Jimin exhales like he's been holding his breath for far too long. Why does this feel like déjà vu? Jungkook murmurs. Jimin lets out a quiet, broken laugh. Maybe some things don't need to be remembered to be real. Outside, the light continues to shift. Time keeps moving. The world doesn't stop, but inside that small studio, for the first time since everything was lost, something begins again, not from memory. Not from the past, but from something deeper, something that refuses to disappear, no matter how many times it's forgotten. The air in the studio feels different after that, not lighter, not easier, but honest. Jimin slowly pulls his hand back again, though this time it isn't out of fear, it's restraint. A fragile, necessary distance, like standing too close to a fire you know could consume you if you're not careful. Jungkook doesn't stop him. But his eyes follow every movement, every hesitation, every silent decision Jimin makes. You should go home, Jimin says quietly. Jungkook doesn't respond immediately. Instead, he tilts his head slightly, studying him again like he's trying to solve something that doesn't have a clear answer. You coming with me? Jungkook asks. Jimin freezes. The question is simple. Simple, and that's what makes it dangerous. No, Jimin replies after a moment. Jungkook's expression doesn't change much, but there's a subtle shift, a flicker of something unreadable. Why not? Jimin exhales slowly. Because this, he gestures faintly between them, this isn't something we should rush. Jungkook frowns. It doesn't feel rushed. It is. Silence stretches again, but this time it carries a different weight. Less confusion, more understanding, even if it's incomplete. You're afraid, Jungkook says softly. Jimin looks at him, doesn't deny it. Yes. The honesty lands gently, but it doesn't break anything. If anything, it makes everything more real. Of what? Jungkook asks. Jimin hesitates, then answers in a way that surprises even himself. Of remembering and of you forgetting again. Jungkook's chest tightens, because even without memories, he understands that kind of fear, the kind that doesn't come from uncertainty, but from knowing exactly how much something means. I won't forget again, Jungkook says. Jimin shakes his head slightly. You don't know that. Try. That's not the same thing. Jungkook takes a step closer, not as bold as before, not as certain, but still moving forward. Then stay until I remember, he says. Jimin's breath catches, because that feels too close to hope, and hope is dangerous. You're asking for something you don't understand, Jimin whispers. Then help me understand. Jimin closes his eyes briefly, and for a moment he lets himself imagine it staying. Walking beside Jungkook again, laughing like before, forgetting everything that broke them, but reality isn't that kind. We didn't just lose memories, Jimin says slowly. We lost something along the way. Jungkook watches him carefully. What? Jimin opens his eyes, and this time he doesn't look away. Trust. The word lingers, heavy, complicated. Jungkook processes it quietly, not reacting immediately, just letting it settle. Did I break it? He asks. Jimin hesitates, because the truth isn't simple. It wasn't just you, he says. Jungkook nods slowly, as if accepting responsibility anyway. Then let me fix it. Lets out a small, tired laugh. You don't even remember how it broke. Then I'll start from now. There's something about the way Jungkook says it, calm, certain, uncomplicated, and it makes Jimin's chest ache in a way he can't ignore. You make it sound so easy, Jimin says again. Jungkook shrugs slightly. Maybe it doesn't have to be as hard as we made it before. That thought lingers. Because maybe, just maybe, they were the ones who made everything heavier than it needed to be. Jimin looks around the studio, at the memories that still exist here even if Jungkook can't see them, at the pieces of a past that refuses to disappear completely. You used to sit there, Jimin says suddenly, pointing to the corner near the window. Jungkook follows his gaze. and you'd get frustrated when something didn't sound right. Jungkook smiles faintly. That sounds like me. It is. Jimin steps closer to that spot, runs his fingers along the edge of the table. Say you were stuck, he continues. That nothing made sense. Jungkook watches him carefully. And what did you do? Jimin pauses, then answers softly. I stayed. The word echoes, different now, fuller. Jungkook walks over slowly, stopping just a step behind him. Then stay again. Jimin closes his eyes because this feels too familiar, too easy to fall back into. You're not the same, Jimin says. Jungkook nods. I know. I'm not either. I know that too. Jimin turns to face him, and for a moment they just look at each other, not as strangers, not as people bound by the past, but as two people standing in the present deciding what comes next. Then maybe that's not a bad thing, Jungkook says. Jimin's expression softens just a little. Maybe. He admits another quiet moment passes, but this one feels steadier, less fragile. I'll walk you home, Jimin says finally. Jungkook raises an eyebrow slightly. I thought you said you weren't coming with me. Not staying, Jimin clarifies. I'm just making sure you get there. Jungkook smiles, and this time it's warmer, more natural. Okay, they leave the studio together, side by side, not touching, but close enough that the space between them feels intentional. The evening air is cool, carrying the faint scent of rain that hasn't quite arrived yet. The city lights flicker on one by one, casting everything in soft gold and shadow. Jungkook glances at Jimin occasionally as they walk, not speaking much, but not needing to halfway there. Jungkook stops. Jimin turns slightly. What is? Hesitates, then asks, were we happy? The question catches Jimin off guard because the answer isn't simple, it never was. We were. Jimin starts, then pauses, searching, choosing his words carefully. We had moments, he says finally. Jungkook nods slowly, as if that's enough. And now? Jungkook asks. Jimin looks at him, really looks. At the person standing in front of him, not the one from before, not the one from memory, but the one here. Don't know yet, Jimin smiles slightly. Then let's find out. They reach the apartment building soon after. The walk ends too quickly, or maybe not quickly enough. Jungkook stops at the entrance, turns to face Jimin. Will you come back tomorrow? He asks. Jimin hesitates, because every step forward feels like a risk, but walking away again feels worse. Yes, Jimin says quietly. Jungkook nods, satisfied, relieved. Good. There's a pause, a lingering moment where neither of them moves. Then Jungkook steps inside. Jimin stays outside, watching until the door closes, and only then. He exhales because this isn't over. Not even closed. Back in his apartment, Jungkook leans against the door, his heart beating faster than it should. His mind is still incomplete, still searching, still lost in places he can't reach but his chest. His chest feels full. He closes his eyes. And again, that same flicker, Jimin's voice, soft, close, familiar. You're not alone. Jungkook opens his eyes slowly, breath unsteady. Then don't leave. He whispers into the quiet room, and for the first time since everything was erased, Jungkook doesn't feel like something is missing, because even without memories, something important has already found its way back, not perfectly, not completely, but enough to begin again.
The next morning feels quieter than it should. Sunlight spills across Jungkook's apartment floor, soft and warm, but it doesn't reach the restlessness inside him. He stands by the window, fingers lightly pressed against the glass, watching the city wake up as if it might offer answers he still doesn't have. But the only thing on his mind is Jimin. True to his word, Jimin comes back, not early, not late. Just exactly when Jungkook begins to wonder if he will. There's something different about him today. Not distant but careful, like someone walking across fragile ground, aware that one wrong step could break everything again. Jungkook opens the door before Jimin even knocks. For a second they just look at each other, and then Jungkook smiles. It's small but real. You came. Nods. I said I would. They don't rush into anything, no dramatic words, no overwhelming confessions, just quiet presence. And somehow that feels more intimate than anything else. Days turn into something softer, not quite normal, but something close. Jimin starts visiting often. Sometimes they talk, sometimes they don't. Sometimes Jungkook asks questions about the past, and sometimes he lets the silence speak instead. And slowly something begins to take shape between them again, not the same as before, but not entirely new either. Jungkook learns Jimin in a different way now, not through memories but through moments. He notices how Jimin always orders the same drink without thinking, how he hums under his breath when he's nervous, how his eyes linger just a second too long when he thinks Jungkook isn't looking. And Jimin starts to see something he didn't expect. Peace. You're calmer, Jimin says one evening as they sit side by side on the couch. Jungkook glances at him. Was I not before? Jimin lets out a quiet laugh. No, you were intense. Jungkook smiles faintly. I still am. Looks at him, and for the first time in a long time, he doesn't feel overwhelmed by it. Weeks pass. And then one night everything shifts. It happens without warning. Jungkook is in the studio alone, the same place where it all began again. He's sitting at the piano, fingers hovering over the keys, chasing a melody he can't quite reach. And then it hits, not a thought, not a feeling, a memory. Jimin's laughter, clear, bright, alive. Jungkook gasps softly, his hands freezing midair, and suddenly more fragments, moments, the sound of rain, a late-night argument, Jimin turning away. Jimin staying anyway. Jungkook stands abruptly, his breath uneven. He whispers, but it doesn't stop. Another flash, Jimin's voice breaking. You don't understand how much this hurts. Presses his hands against his head, overwhelmed. Because it's not just love, it's everything, the good, the painful, the things they never fixed. And then the last memory surfaces, Jimin walking away, not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much. The room spins slightly. Jungkook grips the edge of the piano, grounding himself, because now he understands everything. He finds Jimin that night, standing outside as if he already knew, as if some part of him felt it too. You remember, Jimin says quietly. It's not a question. Jungkook nods. Silence falls between them, but this time it's not uncertain, it's full, complete. I know why you left, Jungkook says. Jimin looks down. And I know why you stayed. Jimin's chest tight. Then you know it wasn't enough. Jungkook takes a step closer. It was everything. Jimin shakes his head. We broke, Jungkook. We weren't okay. I know, there's no denial, no pretending, just truth. And now, Jimin asks, his voice softer. Jungkook looks at him, not as someone trying to remember, but as someone who finally does. Now I know we tried to hold on to something without knowing how to protect it, Jungkook says. Jimin's eyes glisten slightly. That doesn't mean it'll be different. Jungkook nods slowly. It doesn't. Another step forward, careful. Intentional, but I'm different now, Jungkook continues. And you are too, Jimin exhales shakily. Change doesn't fix everything. No, Jungkook agrees, but it gives us a chance to do it better. The words settle between them, not as a promise, but as a possibility. Jimin searches his face, looking for certainty, for proof, for something to believe in. What if we fail again? Jimin doesn't answer immediately. He just looks at him, really looks. Then at least this time, Jungkook says softly, we'll know we chose it fully. Jimin's breath catches, because that's what was missing before, not love, not effort, but choice. They never truly chose each other, without fear, without hesitation, without holding something back until now. Jungkook reaches out, not rushed, not desperate, and this time, Jimin doesn't hesitate. Their hands meet again, stronger, steadier, no confusion. No distance, just understanding. I remember everything, Jungkook says quietly. Jimin nods. I know, I still choose you. Jimin closes his eyes for a second, because those words, they're heavier now, more real. When he opens them again, there's no fear left. Then don't forget that again, Jimin whispers. Jungkook smiles softly. I won't. And maybe he can't promise that memories will never fade, or that life won't break them again. Or that everything will always be easy, but this moment is enough, because love was never just about remembering. It was about returning, again and again, even after losing everything. And this time, they don't let go, not because they're afraid to lose each other, but because they finally understand that holding on isn't about fear. It's about choosing to stay no matter what comes next, and for the first time, that choice feels like home.